Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome to Mammoth Interactive's Introduction to Virtual Reality. So we're going to learn what is virtual reality and how do we achieve that effect where we can feel that we're inside in a virtual reality world. So with just barely 1 hour of lessons, you're going to learn all the tools that you need to develop your own games. Okay, so just 1 hour. So we're going to learn how to make this very simple activity here. You want to enter this castle, but the doors are closed, so you need to interact with this button. So essentially we just look at the button, then we walk inside the castle, and we have all of these enemies here that we have to destroy. And to destroy these enemies we have to trigger the button in a Google Cardboard device, or just touch the screen. So you just look on all the enemies, we press that button, destroy all of them, and notice that we have the interface there as well. And once we destroy all of these enemies, we are able to restart the game one more time. Okay, so you win, and after 3 seconds the game restarts and we're able to interact again. So it's very simple. Okay, my name is Glauco Pires and I've been working in the game industry since 2010, and throughout the years I've worked with several different game engines. So of course I've worked with Unity, but I also made games in Unreal. I've worked with HTML5 games, with Flash games, and worked with several programming languages like C#, Java, and JavaScript. And well, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all the experience that I have and only get the best parts of it to make sure that this lesson is going to be straightforward and simple to understand, so you can understand things the right way and make your games as quick and as simple as possible. Okay, so what we're going to do in the next video is to integrate the virtual reality SDK and start seeing how do we make this interaction of looking at a button, okay, and understand where we are looking at. So I hope you're excited to start this, and I see you soon. Hey there, welcome back. So to start playing with virtual reality, we need to make a new project in Unity so we can practice everything we're speaking of. So we open Unity, we click on the new button in the top right, and we have to set 2 things: the project name and the location. The project name is going to be VR test, okay, our VR interactions, and location is going to be a projects folder that is right under my home folder. We're going to leave 3D rendered enabled, as this is going to be a virtual reality game, and then we click on create project. So now we have to wait for Unity to open, and then we have our editor. Okay, so first of all, whenever you create a new scene in Unity, as you have seen in other classes, you have 2 things already in here. We have a directional light and we have a main camera. Okay, so the camera is what we're going to worry about the most here. If you select the camera, you notice that you can see a few guidelines around it, a few gray lines. Okay, so this is what determines the area that the camera is going to render. And you can even see a little camera preview here. So for instance, if I add a cube, okay, and I put it in the position 0, 0, 0, for example, and you select the camera, you can see that the cube is in the rendering area of the camera. Okay, it's inside this shape here, inside this pyramid that it can use to see. Okay, however, if you move the cube far away from the camera, okay, to a place it can't see, then it is no longer rendered. Okay, so that's pretty much what makes the players to be able to see your game. You have a camera, that camera is kind of trace some rays into multiple angles, and whatever is in there, it's going to render. Okay, but what about virtual reality mode? How does this work? Okay, instead of 1 camera for virtual reality, we have 2. Okay, it's like we duplicated this camera, moved it here, and we are considering these 2. Okay, so you can see from the top that it looks like this. Okay, and why do we do this? Whenever you have 2 cameras, you're able to simulate each of the human eyes. Okay, so we have the left eye and the right eye. When you put these 2 cameras like this and you render both images at once, okay, and you divide the screen into 2 parts, so the left camera is for the left eye and the right camera is for the right eye, this is going to give us the illusion that we are in a virtual reality environment. Okay, that's pretty much the entire logic for making VR to work. Okay, just divide the view into 2 cameras, and then the human eye naturally is going to interpret that as you are into a virtual world. So, for example, if you see the scene divided into 2 cameras, which we're going to do shortly, you could even cross your eyes. You don't even need a VR device to see 3D shapes. Okay, you can make shapes that rotate, that move, and you're going to sense the depth in these images. Okay, so let's delete this second camera. Okay, let's return to our original state. There are multiple ways to work with virtual reality, but in this course specifically, we're going to use Google Cardboard. And why is that? We do this because Google Cardboard is very cheap, okay, a very simple device, and even if you don't have one, you can change the SDK settings so you disable virtual reality mode, so you only use your device's gyroscope. That way you're able to tilt your phone to left, right, top, bottom, and still play whatever game we develop. Okay? So to download the Google Cardboard, we have to go to this web page here, developers.google.com/vr/unity. So we are taken straight to the Unity SDK for this. And this page is going to show us lots of details about whatever we have in this SDK. So what are the features, what does it provide, okay, and if it contains any additional features like support for Daydream, which is coming shortly, and well, other information here. And the two most important links that we're going to see here is this one, the Unity API reference. So if you open this link, you're going to see details about the implementation of this SDK. Okay, you can see the available classes that you can use, and inside these classes you can see things like the properties and some attributes that you can see and change if you want. Okay, you can just take a quick look here later if you want to see more details regarding the code part of this SDK. But to download it, we just have to go to this link here, download the Google VR SDK for Unity. We click here, and we are taken to another page, and it's going to tell you that if you want to integrate this SDK into the Unity project, you have to clone the entire repository. Okay, it's a Git repository hosted on GitHub. However, we can do things much more simple. Okay, we can just click here in this GVR Unity SDK link. Then you're going to be taken to this GitHub webpage, and once we are here, we just click on Google VR for Unity.unity package. In this new page, we just have to press the download button, and after that we should be good to go. Okay, and now in your downloads folder, your file is going to be here, of course. You just double click it, and then wait for the compression process to finish, and you're going to see this screen here now. Okay, so we have import Unity package. And what is this about? A Unity package works like a zip file. It's a compressed file that contains lots of other files in there. It could be dozens of them, okay, and even hundreds, thousands of files. So if you take a quick look here, you're going to see that you have scripts, materials, images, prefabs. There's just lots of things. And as we could see in other videos, instead of worrying about reinventing the wheel, we could just find a plugin, an SDK that is already ready for us, which is this case for Google VR for Unity. Then we just import and we do the necessary adjustments so the virtual reality is going to work. Okay? And now that we have this, we just have to press the import button and sit back for a little while for this import process to finish. And once it is done, all the necessary files for activating VR mode are going to be in our assets folder. Okay? And depending on the Unity version and the SDK version that you're using, you might be prompted to do another import just to ensure compatibility, and you can just accept that. Okay, just press import package, then import again, and we should be good to go. Okay, so import package, and finally import. Okay, now as we saw in other videos, what do we need to do to play the scene? Okay, what do we need to do to actually simulate the game? We have to press the play button. Once we do this, the editor becomes a bit dark, the buttons are going to become blue, and the game window is automatically focused. So this is the real game. But we still don't see that camera split. Okay, we can't see the left camera and the right camera. And with Google VR SDK, this is actually pretty simple. Okay, we can do just one small adjustment to this game. We just go to the Google VR folder. We're going to open prefabs folder. And then we're going to use this file here, gvrviewermain.prefab. And this is basically a file that has been saved for later reuse, so we don't have to worry about building an entire game object that is going to change our scene. So with this prefab in mind, we just drag it and drop here in the hierarchy. Okay. And if you look, the gvrviewermain is just a regular game object, which contains a transform component, but this is not used at all. But we have the gvrviewerscript component, which actually does the VR logic. So we can enable or disable VR logic, the distortion correction, we can change the screen size in the Unity editor, for example. We can do all of these kinds of things. Okay? And just by adding this prefab, if you press the play button right now, notice that the scene is completely different now. Okay, so we have a line in the middle that's kind of dividing each of these cameras, and we have two of these cameras. Okay, you can even check in the hierarchy, the main camera, that we have main camera left. Okay, and if you look at the scene, it should be here. Okay, so they're very close from each other. Okay, you can even see all of them here. Okay, so we have main camera left, which is in the position minus 0.032, and we have main camera right, which is in position positive 0.032. So that stands for more or less 6.5 centimeters, which should be the distance between the human eyes. Okay, so that's pretty much what we talked in the beginning of this lesson. Two cameras, one for each eye, virtual reality activated. And now in this scene, if we add a 3D object, okay, if we add a cube, okay, somewhere, so let's change a few settings here. Let's change its Y position to 1, X could be 2, and Z could be 0. We have this cube here. Okay, we could change its position by just dragging this X value. And at this moment, if you crossed your eyes and moved and changed this value and tried to move the cube closer to the camera, for example, you can even sense a little bit of the 3D effect. Okay, it's like the cube is coming out of the screen. And once you generate a build with this little guy here, okay, and put in your device and put on Google Cardboard, you're going to have a perfect understanding of this virtual reality mode. Okay, and another tip. Some users might think in the beginning when they're working with VR that they have to generate a build every time to test the game. Okay, every time you have to go through the process of generating a file, then uploading it to your device, then putting it in a Google Cardboard, and then trying to run the game. Okay, you don't need to do that. There's a way to simulate a few things in the Unity editor, and mainly the gyroscope, which is the most important thing here. If you hold the Alt or the Option key, you're able to look around. Okay, so it's like we are rotating our head. Okay, we can look up, left, we can even search for the sun in the skybox, which is right there. So this gives a nice sense of positioning to us. And if you hold Ctrl, you can also tilt the head sideways. Okay, this is normally not used, but still it's good to understand that this is here in case you want to do something like, for instance, you can tilt your head just to change a weapon, for example. It's a simple interaction that can change whatever you're holding. Okay. And now that we have this, there's another thing that might be useful when you're making virtual reality games. Okay, it's to add a crosshair, so the player knows exactly where they're looking at. So we can just go to the Google VR folder, prefabs, and we have this UI folder. So we're going to use this GVR radical prefab. With this here, we just drag and drop to main camera. Then we can press play again. And this time in our camera rendering, we see there's a white dot. Okay, so this can be used for aiming at stuff. So regarding aiming, we need to understand something here. Since we're working with virtual reality, we have very limited controls here. So if you're playing in a computer, you have more than 100 keys to use to, well, to make your character move or jump or shoot, for example. When you're playing in an Xbox, for example, you have more than 10 keys, I think more than 20 keys, and, well, several other combinations of key presses, so you can do lots of stuff. But in virtual reality, you can basically only look and press a button. Okay, we have in the Google Cardboard, there's a lateral button that simulates a touch in the screen. So because of this, we need to be smart about how we're going to make some interactions in here. One of these smart ways to do this is to make virtual buttons, and when you look at these buttons, something happens. Okay, so let's start working about this. So for instance, let's right click in our hierarchy. Let's make sure that the scene is not playing. Okay, we're going to right click, select 3D object, and then let's select cube. Okay, let's keep things simple. So we have a cube in our scene. We don't want it to be inside our camera, so let's change its position to 0 on X, -1 on Y, and -5 on Z. Okay, if you press the play button, the cube is going to be below the camera. Okay, you don't start the scene looking at the cube, but if you look down, there's the cube there. So we want to make this cube to work like a button. Okay, let's do a few adjustments here. With the cube selected, let's change the scale of it to 2. And we want to change its color as well. So to do this, we need to make a material for this cube. So let's go back to our assets folder. Let's make sure we are here just so we don't write any files inside the Google VR SDK. Okay, so right click, create material, and then we're going to name this button material. Okay, so we're going to drag this material to this cube, and now we are allowed to change its color. Okay, so let's change it to green color like this one. And just to make it a bit more beautiful, let's add some transparency to it. So in rendering mode, we select transparent. Okay, and then let's choose a value here that is going to look nice. Okay, and now I'm going to right click on this cube. I'm going to choose 3D object and then 3D text. So we're going to add a very simple text in here. Okay, so we have this hello world text. Since the scale of the cube is 2, let's change the scale of the text to be a half, 0.5. So it's going to look like this. Okay, and now let's change the anchor to middle center, alignment to center. Let's change its Z position to be a bit in front of the cube like this. Okay, and we can change the font size to something like 16, for example, and let's name this BTN. Okay, so just button. Okay, and now you might notice that it's a bit pixelated here, so one trick that you can use is to just scale it down, scale the button down, and increase the font size, so the resolution seems to have improved. Okay, let's rename this to simply a label, and cube is going to be named button. And if you press the play button now, you have your button here. Okay, now how do we interact with these buttons? Okay, there are two ways, but both of these ways involve looking. Okay, the looking logic. So we need to understand how to identify this button. And to do this, we need to go in a process called ray casting. Okay, so the camera is here, and to draw this image, the camera is throwing rays into multiple angles. Okay, so they can find all the pixels that they have to draw. In our case, we want to throw a ray in the forward direction. Okay, so whatever the camera is looking, we're going to throw a cube. So for example, let me just do a very quick example here. I'm going to make a simple cube here, a small cube. So what we want to do at all times is to keep casting rays. Okay, so it's like in every moment, imagine we're going to grab a very short amount of time. At some time, this cube is going to throw like this. Okay, so the camera is kind of looking, and there's going to be an effect like this. Okay, and if this ray touches something, we need to identify that something that we looked. Okay, so if the camera rotated, for example, to any other angle, we're going to do still the same thing for the cube. Okay, we're going to throw a ray like this and see if we are touching something. Okay, it's just a little illustration of what we have to do. So to do this, we're going to grab our camera here, and let's rename it to player. It's still a camera, but it's also the player, since the players are going to be looking through the lenses of this camera here, of this VR camera. Then let's treat it as a player. Okay, it makes some sense. And now in the project window, we're going to right click, select create, then C# script, and this is going to be named player. Okay, then we hit enter, we wait for the compilation to complete so we can use this script, and with the player selected here, you can just drag and drop the script. Okay, so the script component has been attached here, and we're able to write code for the player. Okay, so let's double click it. We wait for MonoDevelop to open, which is the programming software that already comes with Unity. And after it is, we have our class here, and we have two methods, start and update. The one that we're going to use the most is update. Okay, so this is what we're going to do here. We're going to type raycast hit. So what is this? We've declared a local variable inside this method scope here. That variable name is called hit. Okay, so hit is going to store something, and the type of that something that is going to be stored is raycast hit. And if you hover your mouse over this, you're going to see the summary. So it's a structure used to get information back from a raycast. That means if your raycast hits something, then that something is going to be stored in raycast hit along with other details. Okay, and now we need the aid of an if block. Okay, we need to type this. Okay, so an if block is a conditional block. You're going to ask a question here, and then if that question is true, we're going to run whatever we put here. So what is the question that we want to ask here? The thing is, we're going to perform actually three things at once here. Okay, it's a short way to perform a raycast. We're going to call the raycast method here. We're going to type physics.raycast. Okay, so this is a method call. It's a method called raycast from the class physics. And here we need to pass 3 parameters to perform the raycast. First of all, we need to pass the origin of the raycast, and that's pretty simple. We want the ray to come from the exact position where the camera is, where the player might be. So we just type here transform.position. Okay, because this is the position where our player is right now. Okay, our player game object. The second parameter is the direction of the ray, and this would be very complicated because we would need to do some complex mathematics here, but as we're working with Unity, we can simply type transform.forward. Okay, so it doesn't matter how many times you might have rotated the camera. Okay, it could look there, it doesn't matter where you're looking. This vector3.forward is always going to be this blue arrow here. So it's whatever the player is pointing to. Okay, so it's going to work exactly like we want. Okay, so we have transform.forward. And the third parameter is where we're going to save the hit information if there was a hit. So we just type out hit. Okay, so the result of this raycast is going to kind of exit this method and save it here. Okay, and why do we do this inside an if block? Because this is going to return either true or false. Okay, if true, it means we hit something and we are able to use this hit variable. If it didn't hit a thing, okay, if it hit anything, then this is going to store basically nothing, so we're not allowed to use it. So the usage of this hit is going to be used here. And what we want to do first is to print whatever we looked. Okay, we're going to print the name of the thing that we looked. So we're going to type here debug.log, and between parentheses we're going to type hit.transform.name. Okay, let's save this. We go back to Unity, wait for the compilation to complete, and now if we press the play button, okay, there we go, here we are. And if we look at this cube here, notice that we are printing button all the time. Okay, because the update method is called every time it sees that we're looking at a button, and it's printing the name of the button. Okay, and this is good. Okay, so that means that we already see we already have a notion of what we're looking, and this pretty much unlocks lots of things for you. Okay, you can look at different buttons and make them do different things. Okay, so what we're going to do in this next lesson is we're going to design a very simple scene in here where we're going to have a door, and we have to look at the button to open that door. Okay, and since we finished working with the scene, let's go to File, Save Scene, or just hit Ctrl S or Command S, and let's save this as experiment.unity. Okay, so all the setup that we did in our hierarchy is going to be saved. I'll see you in the next video. To build a very simple scene here, we need to work with primitive assets, okay, primitive 3D models. So we want to keep things simple, just like we did with the button. So first of all, instead of making this button to stand below the ground, let's move it to the Z position. Let's leave the Z position untouched for now. Let's change Y for 1 and X for 5, for example. So it's going to be to the right of the player. Okay. Now let's create an empty object in our hierarchy. Okay, we're going to name this castle, for example. Okay, so it's going to be an entry of a castle. Position 0, Y0, and Z0. To make a floor, we can just right click in the castle, select 3D object, and then plane, like this, and change its scale on X to be 2, and on Z to be something like 10, for example. So it's going to be very big. Okay. Now if you want to color this plane with a different color, as usual we have to make a material. So we're going to right click in the assets folder, select create and then material, and then this is going to be floor material. Okay, we're going to change the color of this to a dark brown like this one, and we're going to put it here. Okay, and we need to make some walls for this castle. Okay, so let's navigate in here. We're going to right click on castle, 3D object, then cube. Okay, the position 0, 0, 0 is just fine. We're just going to change x to, actually the scale x, let's see, to 15. Yes, I think this is going to work well. And the scale on y is going to be something like 10, for example. Not a very tall castle, but still, it's going to be useful for us. And we want to surround this castle with these walls. Okay, so we want to duplicate this, what we have here. Let's rename this to wall, by the way, and hit enter. We're going to duplicate this wall and change it to another position, say 30, like this. And now we have to close this little box that we're building here. So duplicate this wall here once again. And since the first wall is on position 0 and this one is on position 30, the new walls that we're going to make here are going to be in the Z position 15, which is in the middle. We're going to change the scale on X to be 1 and on Z to be, I think it's going to be 30. Yes. Now let's change the X position to be, let's try here. I'm just experimenting here to find the right values that we're going to use. Okay, so 7 is fine. Then we duplicate that again by hitting Ctrl D or Command D and change the horizontal position to -7. So we've closed this box here. Okay. However, this castle that we are building, this very simple castle, doesn't have an entry point, so we need to change that. And there is an easy way to do this. Okay, we can just select the first wall, and we're going to choose this resizing tool here. It's used for basically resizing 2D elements, but since we're looking at a huge 3D element here, we can just, you see that there are some blue guides around this shape. So you can just click on these arrows and resize these walls like this. Okay, so we have this first wall. We can duplicate that and change its position on X to what the opposite of what we have here. So instead of -494, we change it to +494. Okay, and now we duplicate that wall one more time. Okay, let's rename this one to door. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab this and rotate it like this. Okay, so we've kind of flipped the wall that we had here, so it's going to resemble a door. Okay, it's something that can be opened. We even need to have to make a very small adjustment here, but still, it looks like we have only one wall, but this one is a separate object that we want to make it do this. Okay, now let's color these walls. I'm going to right click, select create, then material, and I'm going to rename this material to castle material, and this is going to be gray. Okay, this color here. And to apply this material, instead of going shape by shape here and just dragging and dropping, you can just select all of the shapes that you want to color at once. So you can click on the first one, hold shift and click on the last one, and in the mesh render component, which is the actual thing that draws these 3D shapes, you're going to expand material and you're going to drag this castle material and drop here. So everyone now shares this gray color. Okay, so it's a very simple scene that we have here, and what we have to do is when we look at the button, we want to make the wall to move down, okay, and then make the player to walk inside the castle. Okay, so it's kind of one simple interaction that we're going to develop here. So in the next video, let's work on making this button to work on lowering the door.